Second, we thank you for agreeing this great country of yours, Ghana, to be host of this year's African Leadership Forum, the 7th edition. And third, we thank you for allocating time out of your very busy schedule to come in person to grace this 7th forum. I understand you only came back last night from an important overseas trip. It means a lot to us. It demonstrates the importance you attach not only to the ideals of the African Leadership Forum and the work of CFTA, but also to the quest for unlocking the potentials of African agriculture. Your Excellency, fellow heads of state and government, former heads of state and government, distinguished participants, the African Leadership Forum was established in 2014 with the objective of bringing together former and current African leaders to discuss and exchange ideas on pertinent African challenges and find ways of addressing them. It is a forum where African leaders share experiences and knowledge and explore pathways to getting sustainable solutions to socio-economic development challenges facing our dear continent. The idea of establishing the African Leadership Forum was hatched by 3 prominent former presidents. These are none other His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, former President of the Republic of Nigeria, or the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who happens to be here with us. Thank you very much, our elder statesman. Also, it was the former President of the Republic of Botswana, His Excellency Festus Mogae. He couldn't join us, but he said he's with us in spirit. And the third was His Excellency Benjamin William Mkapa, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania, who is now late, unfortunately. They were in Dar es Salaam, attending a meeting, a symposium on shared societies and inclusive sustainable development. The symposium was organized by the World Leadership Alliance, Club de Madrid, and the Wongozi Institute, which is a leadership training institute based in Dar es Salaam. The 3 leaders agreed that African perspectives need to be interrogated, analyzed, understood, and expressed by Africans themselves. As a result, the African Leadership Forum was established a year later. President Benjamin Mkapa, they agreed amongst themselves, President Benjamin Mkapa would be patron of the African Leadership Forum, and the Wongozi Institute would provide the secretariat of the organization of the forum. Since its inception, the African Leadership Forum has played an important role in fostering candid conversation and opportunities, challenges, and solutions for Africa's socio-economic needs and problems. The forum has also been discussing global developments and how they impact on the advancement of the African continent. To date, the forum has had 6 meetings and has covered 6 broad thematic areas. In 2014, the forum discussed meeting the challenges of Africa's transformation. In 2015, the forum discussed moving towards integrated Africa, what needs to be done. In 2016, the forum discussed enabling African business to transform the continent. In 2017, this forum discussed peace and security for an integrated, united, and sustainable Africa. In 2018, the forum discussed financing Africa's transformation for sustainable development. And in 2019, the forum discussed promoting good natural resources management for socio-economic transformation in Africa. The 7th edition of the African Leadership Forum, under the theme of promoting intra-Africa trade to unlock agricultural potential in Africa, was supposed to be held on the 29th and 30th of July 2020 in Dar es Salaam. Unfortunately, on the 24th of July, President Kappa died. So the program was postponed. And for 2 years after his passing and the menace of COVID-19, things stalled. Your Excellency President Nana Akufo-Addo, Excellencies, former heads of state and government, distinguished participants, after the easing of the COVID-19 pandemic, work on holding the 7th meeting of the forum was revived. Here we are. The 7th edition of the ALF is about to be launched by His Excellency President Nana Akufo-Addo. I'm delighted to say that this is the most attended forum compared to all others, with 8 former heads of state and government attending. So thank you, President. I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the presence of Their Excellencies, former heads of state and government. Let me mention His Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo, former President of the Republic of Nigeria. Can you stand up, sir? His Excellency Mohamed Monsef Marzouki, former President of the Republic of Tunisia. His Excellency Goodluck Jonathan, former President of the Republic of Nigeria. His Excellency Thomas Boniai, former President of the Republic of Benin. His Excellency Ernest Bai Koroma, former President of the Republic of Sierra Leone. His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn, former Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. And Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, former President of the Republic of Liberia, who is going to join us virtually. I'd also like to express apologies on behalf of 2 former presidents of Ghana, His Excellency John Kufuor and His Excellency Dramani Mahama. They are out of the country for engagements they have to attend in person. I spoke to them before coming here. They apologize. They may not be there. They feel sorry, but they couldn't do otherwise. Of course, President Uhuru Kenyatta promised to join us later today, so we'll be following up to confirm if we'll be able to make it or not. Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it would be remiss of me if I did not recognize and thank His Excellency Wamkele Mene, the Secretary General of CFTA, for the pivotal role he personally and his esteemed organization played in making it possible for this meeting to be held here in Accra. First, we thank him for agreeing to be a co-convener with me. And second, for agreeing that CFTA work with the Uongozi Institute in organizing this forum. My fellow former heads of state and government will agree with me that the organization of a forum of this magnitude is no easy task. But thanks to the wonderful work done by the organizers, this forum has been a big success. I extend my compliments and appreciations to him, to the CFTA, and to the Wongozi Institute for a job very well done. I also thank all the presenters, moderators, and rapporteurs for coming and agreeing to share their insights, wisdom, and experience in the various sessions that will take place in the coming 1.5 days. Excellencies, you will agree with me that the choice of Accra to be the venue of this 7th ALF was not by accident. The theme of the forum is on promoting intra-Africa trade, which is the hallmark responsibility of the CFTA, whose headquarters is here in Accra. We couldn't have chosen a better place than this great city. A better place to hear and discuss the progress we are making on implementing the aspirations of establishing the Continental Free Trade Area. With the other objective of the forum being to contribute to efforts being made by governments and people of this continent for a better future, it is quite opportune for the forum to choose to discuss unlocking the agricultural potential in Africa. Agriculture is the mainstay of the majority of the people of sub-Saharan Africa. Agriculture is the backbone of the economies of the majority of countries of sub-Saharan Africa. Agriculture accounts for a large share of the GDP of our countries, and it is a major source of foreign exchange earnings, a source of food, a source of raw materials, and a major source of employment. There is no sector that employs so many people on the continent more than agriculture does. However, this important sector has not been able to perform optimally because of the many constraints impeding full exploitation of its potential. Therefore, for this forum to discuss unlocking the agricultural potential of Africa, it is the right thing to do. Mr. President, I would like to seize this opportunity to acknowledge the efforts being made by African governments, the African smallholder farmers and large-scale farmers, and other stakeholders to transform African agriculture. A lot of ground, a significant ground has been covered, and a lot has been achieved so far. However, much more needs to be done to make agriculture play its rightful role in the growth and development of African nations and the well-being and prosperity of the people of Africa. So far, so good, but it's not good enough, as evidenced by the levels of poverty in rural areas, where many of our people live and depend on agriculture, and the never-ending reports of people who suffer from food shortages and hunger in Africa. Reports of Africa still spending huge sums of our hard-earned forex importing food are not pleasant to hear, to continue to hear. Likewise, reports that Africa is still exporting primary raw agricultural raw materials to the developed world and importing finished products from the raw materials we exported is not so good. I'm glad that this forum is framed to discuss how we address these and other related challenges. The forum is also framed to acknowledge the contribution of our institutions, regional and international, governmental and non-governmental, in advancing this agenda and accelerating accelerating the process of Africa's socio-economic transformation and ensuring we meet the people's aspirations for prosperity. I'm grateful to have in our midst the experts from all fields of socio-economic development, policymakers and business people. I hope you will feel free and open to share your experiences, wisdom, and knowledge. Also that you will be forthcoming in providing recommendations and suggesting solutions. Thank you all for coming, and I wish you all good deliberations. Mr. President, please allow me to ensure the delegates that all deliberations will be kept in-house, and the discussions after the plenary session will take place under the Chatham House rules. Before I conclude my remarks, I would like to thank all the sponsors whose contributions have made this forum possible. I wish to make special mention of the government of Ghana, the AFCFTA, the National Microfinance Bank of Tanzania, CRDB Bank of Tanzania, Tanzania Agricultural Development Bank, the National Bank of Commerce of Tanzania, Asas Company of Tanzania, Comnet, and Rahisi, DTB of Tanzania, Karibu Travel, African Leadership Magazine, and several others. We thank you very much for your support and generosity in ensuring this forum becomes a success. I'd also like to appreciate all of you who have shown interest to support us in the upcoming events. Let me end here, but before I invite His Excellency Wamkele Pene, the Secretary General of AFCFTA, to deliver the keynote address, please allow me to invite all of you to watch an 8-minute short video clip as a tribute to the late President Benjamin William Mkapa, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania and the founding patron of the ALF. But with your indulgence, Mr. President, before that, I request you all to rise and observe a moment of silence in his honor. I thank you. And thank you for your kind attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're waiting for the video to play. As we do that, and I see you're trying to get it ready, thank you to the technical team. We must make sure we observe the rules as set, but if you are able to share some thoughts, you can engage on social media, hashtag ALF2023. I'd like to let you also know that we have translation. So the gadgets should be available for you. Should you require English, it's channel 1, French is channel 2, Portuguese is channel 3, and Arabic is channel 4. And as they continue to just set that up, the scene has been set for our deliberations, and I want to share 2 African proverbs with you to help keep us on track. One is that knowledge is a garden. If it isn't cultivated, we cannot harvest it. And so here we come together to cultivate, and we hope to harvest. The second one interconnects to that. I hope I get it right. No matter how hot your anger, it cannot cook yams. I hear that one, Your Excellency Obasanjo is from Nigeria. I'm not sure I hear, but we need action. So, deliberations, what's the action? How do we work together? I'm looking at the technical team and hoping that the video will be ready in a moment. Yes? Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause.
See the late Benjamin William Mkpa's pivotal role in the African Leadership Forum. We present to you his hopes for the forum and major tenets on Africa's advancement. His Excellency Benjamin William Mkpa initiated the African Leadership Forum in 2014.
Well, as President Mbeki has pointed out, we have a mass of resolutions and volumes of consensus on a succession of meetings at national, regional, and continental levels. First, we don't sit back often enough to review what has happened in those resolutions and the consensus. We don't discuss enough whether we have adequate institutions for implementation. We don't stop or get together to review each other's experiences in implementation of agreed policies. We don't get together to review the impact of our resolutions on our own societies, but also what is elicited from the extracontinental powers and organizations. And this is really what the challenge is about. We can refine the resolutions, we can refine the decisions, we can make them more responsive to changes, whether the effect of globalization or regional integration. But we must have a mechanism, a forum regularly where we can review progress.
His Excellency was instrumental in determining the theme and encouraging the proactive participation of prominent African leaders in the 6 forums held from 2014 to 2019. But most importantly, he took an active part in the discussions. As his nickname goes, Mzee wa Ukweli na Wazi, His Excellency the late Mkpa encouraged frank, open, and in-depth discussions during the African Leadership Forums to help identify realistic ways to support African leaders overcome the pressing and strategic challenges facing their countries.
I'm hoping that because of the discussions at former heads of state and basing on their experience while they were in government, we can have insights that will galvanize the process of transformation by present leaders. And we do that by sending them our, not resolutions, but our conclusions, so they can work on them if they want to. But especially alerting them to the kind of dangers that can impede the rapid and sustainable development of our country.
His Excellency the late Mkpa strongly believed that Africa's transformation can only be achieved through self-reliance. Africa must develop itself and must own the process of transformation.
Ladies and gentlemen, the world today is characterized by rapidly advancing disorientation and dysfunction. Big power alliances are coming apart. Small power integration is proceeding at snail's pace. International cooperation is less professed and may stand out not in profession but in malpractice. Development aid is increasingly questioned because it is seen as a dirty word. Africa is seen much more as a source of minerals, and its migrants are not only resented in Europe, but are left to die as they strive to cross the Mediterranean. In such a chaotic world environment, Africa must review its development perspective and strengthen its capacity for self-reliance.
We are Africans. We are not Americans. We are not Europeans. We are not Japanese.
there must be characteristics that define us in terms of our history, of our values, etc., etc. And we must transform without abandoning that uniqueness that makes us Africans. I would emphasize this especially for the youth, because as the globe grows to be finer and closer, we tend to think about the superiority of more ancient countries or longer known countries, and we call ourselves new and developing countries. But that does not mean that we're any deficient in values, in unity, in humanity. So don't model ourselves on the Americans, particularly culturally and educationally and so on, or on the Europeans or any other. Let us find an African cultural base. Let us find an African aspirational base. Let us find a process of transformation which strengthens our unity and reinforces our identity. That's what I would urge. No one else is going to develop us. We are going to have to develop ourselves, and that way earn the respect of those others. Cooperation, as the president was saying, we must learn to work together. Africans must realize, you can't say this country, it is because it is by itself. No, I am because we are. Otherwise, we won't get any place. What I'm most clear about is the primary stage of transformation for our people, which is conquering the scourge of poverty in the sense of hunger, bad health, lack of water, enough food, and this can be done at relatively low financial cost, but a great human spirit of determination. And this requires leadership which is inspired and a population which is responsive, because it knows that it is included in the development and transformation process. The question is whether we have the resolve to tackle these problems ourselves. And that is the key. If you have the resolve, you must try and you will achieve something. Not all of it, but to achieve something. It's that will, that resolution, that self-assurance that will drive us forward towards greater unity, towards greater cooperation, and achieve results. But you must believe in what you are doing, what you are professing, and what you are mobilizing your colleagues and your people around.
His Excellency Benjamin William Mkapa devoted his life to the advancement of Africans. May current and aspiring leaders preserve and continue his legacy so that we Africans may all benefit from sound leadership and sustainable development.
Wow. Wow. We are Africans. No one's coming to develop us. We must develop ourselves. We must cooperate. I am because we are. Ubuntu. How many of us believe in that, truly? Truly. I'm not seeing hands. Yes, thank you, Your Excellency. Yes, yes. We have to. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, before we welcome Your Excellency Wamkele Mene to come up, let's set the context of the discussions today. We do have a video that's just going to play in a moment, and you get a sense that Africa 60 years ago was looking at self-determination, independence, and a struggle. That struggle was there. And then we went through a period where it was democracy, peacemaking, and a whole series, and we continue in some places to be in that, as we know. But it feels like we're coming to a time of the golden rights, of respect, of dignity, of prosperity, and how do we tap into that for the continent? And the opportunity that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area presents us is massive. Let me ask the team, please, let's play the video, and then we shall welcome Your Excellency to come up. Thank you.
The launch of the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, marks an important milestone in Africa's regional integration. The AU theme for 2023, Acceleration of the AFCFTA Implementation, seeks to augment the efforts and activities of the AFCFTA, which is to create a single Pan-African market to ensure free movement of goods, services, business people, and capital by eliminating trade barriers to support the private sector and boost intra-African trade. The AFCFTA is poised to accelerate trade between African countries on the continent and be the driving engine to transform the economy of Africa.
Where there is strong collaboration amongst all organs and specialized agencies of the African Union and regional economic communities, accelerating the implementation of the AFCFTA shall produce the results that we all desire. In accelerating the implementation of the AFCFTA, in accordance with the theme of this year, we must leverage on Africa's development finance institutions, such as our strategic partners, Afreximbank and the AFDB, to ensure that we build on the success recorded thus far.
The desire to establish a new era of trade in Africa was not only expressed by Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, but by all our Pan-African forefathers, and their vision is being realized today through the AFCFTA. A new era of trade in Africa means a new era of connectivity in Africa, a new era of infrastructure in Africa, a new era of creativity in Africa, a new era of opportunities, productivity, and development in Africa. In this new era, you can produce in Accra and compete in Kigali, buy from Lagos and pay in Benin, or live in Tripoli and trade in Tunisia. In this new era, the AFCFTA will empower women and youth in trade to have access to endless opportunities in trading across African countries. The AFCFTA will also implement a cashless and simplified payment system through PAPS with reduced tariffs. By prioritizing and enhancing the operations of agro-processing, automotives, pharmaceuticals, transport and logistics, the AFCFTA will promote regional value chain development and enable the continent's private sector. With a common market of 1.4 billion people trading amongst each other, the AFCFTA has potential to lift 30 million Africans out of extreme poverty. The AFCFTA's new era of trade brings endless opportunities. We must all come together to create one African market and prosper the economy of Africa. Let's create one African market.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to make keynote remarks this morning. His Excellency, the Secretary General of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, Wamkele Mene, a better round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Program Director. Your Excellency, President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, President of the Fourth Republic of Ghana, Your Excellency, President Dr. Kikwete, Patron of the African Leadership Forum and former President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Your Excellency, President Olusegun Obasanjo, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Your Excellency, President Goodluck Jonathan, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Your Excellency, President Marzuki, former President of the Republic of Tunisia, Your Excellency, President Ernest Bai Koroma, former President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Your Excellency, Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn, former Prime Minister of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, Your Excellency, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, former President of the Republic of Liberia, Your Excellency President Thomas Boni Yayi, former President of the Republic of Benin, honorable ministers that are here with us today, the President of Accra, CEO of the Uongozi Institute. May I start by joining President Kikwete in thanking President Akufo-Addo for being here with us today. I know, Your Excellency, you had an equally important engagement in another part of the world, but you are here with us today, and we certainly appreciate your presence here with us. In March 2020, I received a phone call days after I was sworn into this position. And the person on the other side of the line said, is this the Secretary General? I said, yes. And, he said to me, this is Benjamin Mkapa. I said, the only Benjamin Mkapa I know of is the former president of Tanzania. So which Benjamin Mkapa are you? I had never received a phone call from a head of state before. So he said, this is the former president. So I rose from the chair that I was sitting on and I stood up as I spoke to the president. He told me that he wanted us to partner because he believed in the mission of the African Continental Free Trade Area. I said, President, of course, I look forward to us working together. Days later, I received a letter inviting us to the forum in July 2020. And of course, as President Kikwete said, due to his unfortunate demise, that event did not happen. So I'm most grateful that we do have the opportunity to continue his legacy. And I'm most grateful that President Kikwete, President Obasanjo, and others, and our former heads of states are here in Accra, not only to celebrate the vision of this forum, but also to take stock of the progress that has been made in economic integration in Africa. This is the third year that we are in Accra, in Ghana, and how incredibly symbolic and important it is that this event is taking place in Accra, in Ghana, a country that for decades has been at the vanguard of African unity and Pan-Africanism. This year, as we know, we celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Organization of African Unity, which is now the African Union. The AFCFTA Secretariat is therefore honored to convene this forum with the African Leadership Forum and Uongozi Institute in the year 2023. Again, I wish to express my very sincere appreciation to His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Fourth Republic of Ghana, under whose auspices we gather here today. I also want to thank His Excellency President Kikwete for his energy, his commitment, and ensuring that we gather here today. We convene at a time of widespread concern about the potential impact of multiple challenges that confront our continent: food security, COVID-19 pandemic from which we are emerging, and of course, the geopolitical context that all of us are aware of. This geopolitical context, which is of no doing of Africans, has caused food insecurity, rising costs of food across the continent, inflationary pressures on staple foods, causing millions and millions of Africans to fall back into poverty. The number of people experiencing food insecurity at a moderate or severe level is estimated to have increased from 512 million in 2014 to close to 800 million in 2021, nearly 60% of Africa's population. In 2020, over 20 million people and at least 10 million children faced severe food shortage due to crop failure and 4 consecutive dry seasons. The African Union's Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program, CAADP, the biannual review report of 2019-2021, demonstrates that Africa is not on track to meet our goals of ending hunger by the year 2025. Africa remains a net food importer as the continent's demand for commodities such as cereals, meats, dairy products, oils, and sugar continues to outstrip domestic supply. According to the Food Agricultural Organization, Sub-Saharan Africa's food import bill was 50 million United States dollars in the year 2019, an increase of close to 2% from earlier years. The food import bill for the whole continent is estimated to be at about $80 billion per year in the period 2015 to 2017. In terms of international trade, the continent is highly dependent on extra African sources of imports of food and agricultural products. Clearly, there is no reason for our continent to be a net food importer. Africa holds at least 1/6 of global plant species, with many crops of African origin, species of wheat, barley, maize meal, sorghum, 65% of the world's arable land, and 30% of mineral deposits are here in our continent. Therefore, it is possible for our continent to be self-sufficient, to provide food for herself, and to unlock opportunities, job opportunities for young Africans in the area of agriculture and agro-processing. Therefore, there is an imperative for us to accelerate trade in agricultural products, basic agricultural products, to enable our communities, the rural communities, smallholder farmers, to be part of the value chain of agricultural products trade in Africa. This is why the African Continental Free Trade Area is so critical. It positions our continent to take advantage of the resources that we have, to create jobs, to enable smallholder farmers to be part of trade in Africa. Trade in agricultural products will enable our continent to overcome this challenge of being a net food importer. It is only through efficient cross-border trade that Africa can ensure that the people of this continent who have the surplus food are able to export their huge capacities to other parts of the continent to overcome food deficits and food insecurity. This 7th session of the African Leadership Forum, therefore, presents a very important opportunity for us, with the help and the leadership of our former heads of states, to focus on boosting and unlocking agricultural potential in Africa. It is incredibly important that we accelerate measures to dismantle barriers to intra-Africa trade in agricultural products, which inhibit intra-Africa trade across all of the very important agricultural products that feed our continent. Your Excellencies, in recognition of the role of the private sector, including small and medium enterprises, including businesses that are led by women, to deliver on this dual mandate of accelerating intra-Africa trade and boosting Africa's trading position in the world, the AFCFTA Secretariat has prioritized agriculture and agro-processing as one of the value chains that will drive and power industrial development, job creation, and food security in Africa. Africa does not need to depend on other parts of the world for food security. I wish to make an example of some of the initiatives that we are undertaking to ensure that we overcome this challenge of food insecurity. One such initiative is the support that we are providing and the collaboration that we've undertaken with the government of Zimbabwe to ensure that the surplus grains that Zimbabwe has feed the continent of Africa. We're working with the government of Zimbabwe to ensure that Zimbabwe is able to increase its strategic grain reserves by an additional 1 million metric tons from the current 500,000 metric tons per annum. This effort will further enable Zimbabwe to reduce the current levels of post-harvest losses over the whole value chain from field to food processing, saving the country up to $200 million yearly. I'm most grateful to the leadership of President Mnangagwa and his cabinet for ensuring that Zimbabwe is well positioned not only to feed the region of Southern Africa, but also to feed the entire continent. Let me conclude, Your Excellencies, by once again noting the immense challenges that our continent faces as we confront food insecurity in Africa. As President Kagame reminded us recently, a continent of 1.3 billion people relying on a country of 43 million people for its own food security. We have the capacity in Africa to feed ourselves, to provide jobs in the agricultural industry and agro-processing, and indeed, we have the capacity to export agricultural products, processed agricultural products, to other parts of the world. What has been evading us, of course, is an instrument which would complement the already existing policies of the African Union in the area of agriculture, and that legal instrument is the AFCFTA. It sets a very ambitious target of reduction of tariffs and non-tariff barriers in the areas of agriculture to enable the free flow and trade of agricultural products across the African continent. And so I'm most grateful to Your Excellencies, our former heads of states, for providing a focused attention in this area. In the forthcoming session of the Assembly of Heads of States and Government, when they convene in Addis Ababa in February next year, we will provide a report of this session, and we will urge our heads of states in the Assembly of Heads of States and Government to take concrete action towards alleviating the food insecurity crisis that our continent is experiencing. We will also urge our heads of states not only to end there, but also under the framework of the AFCFTA to drastically and accelerate the impact of the AFCFTA on providing opportunities in the agricultural industry and agro-processing. Let me end by citing a very encouraging development which underscores the point and the objective of this gathering today. Last year, with President Ruto, we flagged off agricultural products, value-added agricultural products that were being exported under the rules of the AFCFTA from Kenya to Ghana. The tea that was produced by smallholder farmers in Kenya, whom the government has organized into cooperatives, was exported not only to Ghana, but to other parts of West Africa. A remarkable story, in my view, a remarkable story of the AFCFTA functioning, but more importantly, a remarkable story of how agriculture can contribute to trade, a remarkable story of inclusivity, how smallholder farmers can now legitimately make a claim to contributing to intra-Africa trade. And so, Your Excellencies, let me conclude by once again thanking you for your presence here today, and I very much look forward to the discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. And now for our official opening. Ladies and gentlemen, a very, very warm welcome to His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana.
The former President of the Republic of Tanzania and patron of the African Leadership Forum, His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete, the former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, the former President of the Republic of Benin, His Excellency Thomas Yaya Boni, the former President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, His Excellency Ernest Bai Koroma, the former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Goodluck Jonathan, the former President of the Republic of Tunisia, His Excellency Mohamed Monsef Mazouki, the former Prime Minister of the Government of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn, the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, His Excellency Wamkele Mene, Ghana's Minister for Trade and Industry, Ghana's Minister for Food and Agriculture, ministers from sister African countries, board members and Chief Executive Officer of the Ngozi Institute, members of the Diplomatic Corps, fellow Africans, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the government and people of Ghana, it is my great pleasure to welcome Your Excellencies, distinguished leaders of our continent, and all of you to Ghana for the 7th edition of the African Leadership Forum. As we say in Ghana, Akwaba, you're amongst the people who pride themselves on their sense of hospitality, and I hope that by the end of your visit, you will agree with this claim. I believe that the choice of Ghana to host the meeting has everything to do with the special place she holds as a beacon of stable, democratic governance in Africa, as well as the place of the proverbial warm hospitality of the Ghanaian people. Indeed, this forum, being held at a critical period in history when Africa, like the rest of the world, is dealing with the twin effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, could not find a better venue than our vibrant capital city of Accra. I applaud the Ngozi Institute of Dar es Salaam and the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, for convening this forum at a time when we have all come, hopefully, to the realization that no country can afford to go it alone, and that we in Africa are required to hasten the process of continental integration. We cannot allow our collective fate to be decided by exogenous shocks thousands and thousands of miles away. The time is long overdue for Africa and Africans to define our own narrative. We must be defined by what we see in ourselves and not what others choose to say about us. However, this cannot happen if we do not trade amongst ourselves. Africa accounts for only 3% of global trade, and intra-African trade is one of the lowest of any region globally. This is largely due to the colonial economic model, characterized by small individual economies, fragmented and disconnected regional markets, over-reliance on the production and export of primary commodities, and the presence of low productive capacities which have been in existence for the last century. As the adage goes, there is strength in unity, and for all 54 member states of the African Union, our strength lies with our numbers. Cumulatively, we have a population of 1.3 billion, the majority of whom are young people, and we are in possession of a collective GDP of some 3 trillion United States dollars, making us collectively the 8th largest economy in the world. This positions Africa as potentially an extremely attractive investment destination, and with the relevant investment, we'll be able to sustain economic growth and create the job opportunities that the youth of our continent so desperately need. The AFCFTA is undeniably a major game changer, and once fully realized, we can increase intra-African trade by 35 billion United States dollars and reduce external imports by 10 billion United States dollars yearly. This will mean more opportunities for growth for our small businesses and the potential to lift some 30 million people out of extreme poverty. Additionally, a successful AFCFTA will mean that Africa's industrial exports will be diversified, thus moving away from undue reliance on extractive commodities and foreign imports. Indeed, for a continent in possession of a third of the world's arable land, the potential to create prosperity for our peoples through agriculture is immense. With 50% of our peoples engaged in this sector, the World Economic Forum tells us, and I quote, "Agriculture has exceptional potential for increasing intra-African trade, meeting local demand, accelerating GDP growth, creating new jobs, and improving inclusivity due to upstream and downstream linkages," unquote. If we are to realize this, we must first of all move away from being mere producers and exporters of raw agricultural produce and add value to our agriculture. Not only will we be able to increase our earnings from our agriculture, but we will also position countries on the continent to be able to deal with price hikes and shocks caused by global events. It is good to see many African countries transitioning to this point, which will also serve as a major economic boost for African women, the majority of whom make up the agricultural workforce. Unlocking Africa's agricultural potential will help mobilize the requisite amount of financing needed to help develop the continent. Africa needs between 130 to 170 billion United States dollars annually to bridge her infrastructural gap and generate sustainable growth of at least 5% per year. This presents an exceptional opportunity for private sector investment. Your Excellencies, like the vision of our forebears, the AFCFTA has set the stage for Africa's industrialization and transformation. What is required now is for our respective governments and businesses to show bold leadership. We need coherent and complementary strategic actions by governments and businesses, the right mix of policies and strategies for exports, value addition to raw commodities, and a greater sense of purpose to ensure a robust intra-Africa trade to drive agricultural growth, economic diversification, and the much-needed industrialization of the continent. We must consolidate the successes so far, and with a sense of urgency, develop the signature solutions needed to deepen intra-African trade and spur impact investments needed to bring prosperity to the continent and her people. And we must do this with fearless determination. Then we shall put Africa to work and repudiate the recent culture of failure. We shall then take our rightful place in the world, especially if we achieve the difficult target of silencing the guns, without which we cannot attain our objectives of building a free, prosperous, democratic, united Africa, governed by the rule of law, respect for human rights, and the principles of democratic accountability. May God bless the Africa Leadership Forum. Mother Africa, and us all. I thank you for our attention and declare the Africa Leadership Forum duly open.
Thank you very, very much. Please be seated. Thank you, Your Excellency. Another round of applause, please. I will be welcoming the panel up in just a moment, but I know you prefer to be seated where you are when people are speaking up here. So first, we're going to have the context set. And I want to give a welcome to Abdul Majid Nsekela. He is the Group CEO and Managing Director of CRB Bank of Tanzania, which was actually mentioned earlier this morning. Let's give him a round of applause as he comes up. You know, he's on the battlefield, like many of us in this room, trying to make this happen. And so he's going to, from his perspective, share with us the context that he sees. And then we will begin our panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of Republic of Ghana, Your Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, former President of Federal Republic of Nigeria, Your Excellency Dr. Jakaya Kikwete, former President of the Republic of Tanzania, Your Excellency Haile Mariam Boshi, former Prime Minister of Federal Republic of Ethiopia, Your Excellency Wamukale Mene, Secretary General, the African Continental Free Trade Area, the distinguished former heads of states and governments, delegates, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Your Excellency, it is an honor to have an opportunity to be part of the 2023 African Leadership Forum and share a few insights in the panel of leaders on promoting Africa intertrade to unlock agriculture potential in Africa. Today, we have gathered here to embark on transformation journey that will unleash the true power of Africa agriculture sector and drive sustainable development across the continent. With its vast arable land, abundant water resources, and populations of 1.3 billion people, hold immense agricultural potential. However, our current contributions of 4% to the global agricultural productions fall short of what we are capable of. It is time to step up into this potential and maximize the benefit of our people. Your Excellency, Africa agriculture has failed to benefit from growing regional and global market due to unique, inadequate populations, failure to meet market standard, and restrictions in regional trade. The CFTA aim to address these issues by creating the world's largest free trade area, removing tariff and non-tariff barrier, and boosting intra-Africa trade. Today, despite the growing populations in the continent, intra-Africa trade remains low compared to the other regions, and the market is highly fragmented. AfCFTA is a significant step toward integrating Africa's scattered market, making it easier for countries to trade with each other. The integrations will boost the continent's economic output and development and make it a more significant player on this stage. It will also accelerate the continent's effort to eradicate poverty and achieve the ambitions we all looking for sustainability of our continent. Your Excellency, I'm happy today to share a platform with eminent panelists to engage on such important topic of our continent. And I must appreciate the organizer for thinking about the topic of today. Why this topic is so important in our continent? First, Africa holds more than half of the world arable land and is blessed with the water resources. Yet, the continent cannot produce enough food to feed itself. Number two, each year, the continent spends almost $40 billion importing foods, and 1 in every 5 Africans go to bed hungry. Your Excellency, distinguished leaders and the panelists, it is undeniable on this journey, our continent faces unique challenges and pitfalls, and some have been mentioned by the first speakers. Inadequate infrastructure, limited capital, lack of enabling policies have impeded intertrade within Africa, hindering the realizations of our agricultural potential. Moreover, the adverse impact of climate change poses a significant threat, requiring us to adapt and embrace sustainable practice. Your Excellency, to overcome this challenge, we must prioritize technology advancement, optimize resources in each country by leveraging digital innovations, knowledge transfer to maximize our potentials, creating enabling policies, and adopting sustainable farming practice. We can drive agricultural productivity and efficiency we all anticipate. We also need political goodwill from our leaders to drive this ambition forward. Your Excellency, the distinguished leaders and esteemed panelists, unlocking intertrade in the agriculture sector is not a one-man show. It requires a multiple stakeholder approach, bringing together the private sector, the political class, and international partner. The banking sector has played an important role in this area. Banks has been at forefront of supporting agriculture sector, providing a range of financial services, innovative products, but also important, putting forward the financial literacy and teaching farmers. However, the banking sector has also faced the challenges such as limited to credit informations, high default rates in the sector, and inadequate collateral options. It is commendable to know that banks such as the one I lead, CRDB Bank in Tanzania, have shown a positive effort in adopting to emerging trends, including environmental, social, and governance principles. By integrating sustainability practice on their operations, financial institutions set an example for responsible banking that align with the goal of unlocking intertrade and promoting sustainable agriculture. However, I've been a banker for almost 2 decades and a half. From where I sit, I believe the financial institutions in the continent are ready to take this agenda forward. But it will only be possible as long as there is a collaborative effort between countries for these institutions. And what I believe, I know there are financial institutions globally, but we're equally stronger if we collaborate within the countries. And this need effort for all leaders who are policymakers, private sectors who need to work together to devise solutions to address the challenge we all see today. Raising funding is one of the fundamental key. It has been a challenge for many continents. And we normally see raising funding from Globe, World Bank, and others. But the question I can also pose to the audience that we have financial sectors which are stronger in each country in Africa, but they are not collaborating. And we can still raise funding by syndicating those institutions, creating reforms of good policy. Your Excellency, as I pose these questions today, as we deliberate on this topic, we must endeavor to find answers of these fundamental questions that possibly will guide some discussions. I've just come up with about 6 questions. But there are many questions, and we have heard from the speech of our guest of honor. It has immense area which need to be addressed, speech for others, and many of them. And for the last meetings, we have been here, I think we are hearing about many meetings, and we heard about the late President Mkapa mentioning about having institutions which are stronger. That being the case, the first questions which I will pose to the panelists when they're sitting here is how can technology advancement and resource optimizations drive intertrade and unlock the agricultural potential in Africa, ensuring sustainable practice and maximizing productivity. The second question is, in the face of climate change, how can African nations adapt, mitigate risk, and seize opportunity for agricultural growth while promoting resilience, food security? Number 3, what strategies, measures can be implemented to enhance intertrade within Africa, fostering competition, innovations, and collaborations while overcoming challenges in the infrastructure and trade barriers? Fourth questions, how can the banking sector continue to support the agriculture sector in the to unlock intertrade? What specific challenges have banks faced in providing financial service to farmers and agribusiness? Agriculture is the biggest sector. It also attracts political factors when it comes to small farmers. That may change the policy, but we need to address these questions when we're discussing this. The fifth question is, as we strive for sustainability, what effort can be made to integrate environmental, social, and governance principles into the banking sector to support for agriculture, ensuring responsible practice that align with our goal of intertrade and sustainability development? The last question actually goes to the policymaker. And this is whether there is sufficient political goodwill to drive this agenda forward. These questions encapsulate the essence of our dialogue today. Because we all understand, if you talk about how much contribution for agri in the continent, if we're to make sure that it's sustainable, it will be huge, and I think we can be able to lead. Your Excellency, distinguished leaders, it is undeniable that unlocking Africa's agriculture potential require synchronizing policies, adapting to climate change, leveraging to opportunity of CFTA provide, support from Africa partners, and the robust banking sector. When I say banking sector, I mean the commercial banks and non-commercial bank, investment bank as well. By addressing challenges and implementing appropriate measures, Africa can realize its agricultural potential, boost inter-Africa trade, and drive sustainable development across the continent. Your Excellency, As I conclude my remarks, I argue all of us to engage in a dynamic discussions, conversations, challenge the status quo, and collaborate toward a future where Africa agricultural potential is fully realized. Our farmer needs to thrive. Our continent needs to flourish. We can only be able to achieve that by embracing the quote which says, together we unlock the power of intertrade in agriculture, drive economic growth, foster food security, and build a sustainable future of Africa. There is a saying which says, as the old adage goes, if we want to go far, go together. Let us work together to address this important journey and transform Africa. Thank you for listening.
Wow, okay. And it is time now to welcome the panel up to take those and maybe a few other questions. We may not answer them all here now, but we have a few days to do so. And so, Your Excellencies, I'm going to ask you to come back up. I do know that we've heard from a couple of you, and we have a few more who will be on the panel, but we'll dive back into a little bit more. Your Excellency, President Nana Akufo-Addo, can I welcome you to take the seat in the middle, please? Thank you so much, sir. Your Excellency, Jakaya Kikwete, please do come up. Your Excellency, we call you Baba in many different places. Your Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, please do come up, and a warm welcome as you take your seat. Thank you so much. A warm welcome, Your Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn. Please do come up and take your seat. Let me also welcome Your Excellency Wamkele Mene. Please do come up and take your seat as well. I hope these mics are working, so yes, thank you. Is it? Yes, thank you so much to the team. So thank you. We've heard a lot this morning, and I think I'm going to jump right into it, Wamkele, with you. Great questions posed by Abdul Majid. There's a huge potential. There are also incredible challenges, and you've walked us through quite a bit of that. We've been talking about this agenda for decades now, and it goes back to Kwame Nkrumah, it goes back to Julius Nyerere. This is not new to Africa. Why is this the moment that we can make this happen, truly transform the situation in the continent? And what do the different stakeholders need to do for this to be the time we really make a difference, please?
Well, thank you very much, and let me thank all of the heads of states who are with us for this very important discussion, and of course thank His Excellency the President of Ghana and the government of Ghana for the facilities. I think you are correct that the task has evaded us and the continent for too long, since May 1963, when the Organization of African Unity was established in the historic city of Addis Ababa. I do believe that there have been significant successes, particularly if you look at the objectives of the OAU, the political unification of the continent, pushing back on the colonialists, and with the defeat of apartheid in South Africa, that objective was met. What remains is the economic integration of our continent. Today, as we speak, there are 47 countries that have ratified the agreement establishing the AFCFTA. unprecedented political will and political commitment. And that is why in less than 5 years, we've made so much progress because of the demonstrable political will. The topic today is absolutely critical because if we do not unlock opportunities in agriculture, create jobs, feed Africa, we will not succeed as a continent. No country in the world has developed without the agricultural sector as a pillar of growth. If you take, for example, China, when people ask me, well, why do you think from the point of view of trade liberalization of agriculture, how will you be able to include smallholder farmers on a continental value chain? Well, China was able to do it in less than 1 generation, bringing over 700 million farmers, smallholder farmers, as part of a value chain of agriculture to feed that country. So I believe that with the political will that exists, that we have a very unique opportunity to position agriculture, agro-processing, as the driver of food security in Africa, job creation, and ensuring that our continent is globally competitive. The opportunity, I believe, will not come again. If we miss this particular chance, it's difficult to see if we get another chance.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you in a short while with the question, what are the biggest roadblocks right now? But allow me, Your Excellency Desalegn, to come to you now. In the Ethiopia experience, there's so much to learn from the journey that Ethiopia has gone on when it comes to agriculture. When you look at this, the potential to really unlock transformation through this Africa Continental Free Trade Area, let me know, what are your thoughts? What are the learnings we can take from the Ethiopia experience?
Thank you very much, moderator. I think I just want to begin with the hopes and the positive note, because in most cases, when we talk about African transformation, we talk about many negative things which hinder our potential to unleash our mindset. So I think there are many positive things that has to be looked into in our continent. I have been to rural Ghana 2 years ago. I have seen a huge transformation that's taking place in rice production in Ghana. I also went to, before the coup, to Burkina Faso. And there has been 1 million metric ton of rice production program, which an organization, Accra, which I chair, is supporting. And that was also a very good example, not only in Ethiopia, but in Northern Africa, in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Morocco. We have best practices everywhere. You can go to Southern Africa, I can mention a lot. So I think there are lots of best practices that can be scaled up in our continent. And my own country's example, you mentioned, we have agricultural commercialization cluster approach, which a new technology and adaptation of new technologies. We have a number of technologies that are on the shelf by our research and development organizations, which has not been utilized. So I think we don't need to go somewhere else, but we have a breeding, Western Africa Breeding Institute here in Ghana, which is doing a remarkable job. The whole thing is summed up. We can say that the problem with us is we are not, coming together and learning from lessons to bring about productive capacity in our countries. So I think we need to invest in agriculture as the basis for every development. There is none other continent who has moved into the next ladder of economic development without dealing on agriculture first. So we need to engage. Our policies has to, be good enough to make agriculture our priority. And now most African countries are doing that. It's an opportunity. But the most important thing is we are exposed by the shocks, global shocks we have seen now. The mega trends that are going on. The pandemic, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and the climate change, all those things mentioned every time, now and again, are shocks that have exposed our food and agricultural system, that it is vulnerable and it is broken. So we have to make the whole food system, the whole value chain to work. So trade is important. AfCFTA is one of the landmark decisions our leaders have taken, and it should be implemented with that good spirit, with the political leadership and goodwill. So that's important. And I think, so the most important is therefore we have to address our deficits, especially in infrastructure deficit. We have to invest in. We have to call with an NEPAD, a new, African initiative for partnership. Our partners shouldn't come for food aid. They should support us to come up with production and increase our productive capacity. You can see billions and billions of dollars are invested in food aid and emergency and all kinds of things. And people are waiting for emergency to come and to support billions of dollars rather than investing in our productive capacity. So I think we have to make sure that we are engaging with our partners in terms of having, such kind of engagement where they have to do that. Now the African Union and the US partnership, which I co-chair, is working on how to address our infrastructure deficit rather than on food and security, emergency supplies that has been there for years. If you remember back in 1964, the global institution said we have to end hunger in 1963. But after 80 years, we are still talking about ending hunger. So we have to invest in agriculture and invest in such a way that it interconnects and intra-trade is given due attention. And I think this is where we can move. And there are best practices everywhere in our continent that has to be emulated.
Thank you for that. It's great to hear that you see the examples in many places across Africa of best practice, of changes happening. In terms of the development world, as the MasterCard Foundation, we really are trying to work in many of these spaces to enable, local decision-making, solutions, build capacity, but also to ensure that our partnerships are respectful and action-oriented and really embedded in the needs of the African continent. I'm going to come more to that in a moment. But President Olusegun Obasanjo, let me come to you, Your Excellency, and just really jump into it from several perspectives, a leadership perspective from where you sit today, but also you have farmed yourself. You have been a farmer. And so I know you've had your hands on the ground, so share with us.
He's a farmer.
He is, yes, and still is. Wonderful, wonderful. Share with us, where are we now and where would you like to see us going? What needs to be done to get us there? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we are, as Prime Minister El-Mariam said, we are on the way, but we are not there yet. One of the things that I even see on our topic is we are talking of agriculture. I believe we should stop talking of agriculture. We should be talking of agribusiness. When you talk of agribusiness, you take everything together. Agriculture was what we were given by the colonial, not agribusiness. Agribusiness takes the whole value chain from land preparation, from equipment, even for land preparation, up to the food on the table. And that is what we should now be talking about. I will not want to continue to remain in producing crops or product that we have to go to Europe to add value and brought back here. Take cocoa. We in West Africa and Central Africa produce more than 75% of cocoa in the world. And some people will say to us, oh, we in Africa cannot trade among ourselves in agribusiness because we produce the same thing. But they in Europe produce the same thing and they trade among themselves. Why can't we here? Ghana produces cocoa. Ghana's cocoa has to go to Switzerland, to Germany, before it's turned to chocolate. Kenya does not produce cocoa, but they eat chocolate. South Africa does not produce cocoa, but they eat chocolate. Why can't the cocoa we produce in Ghana and in Cote d'Ivoire be turned to chocolate and be sent to Kenya, to Tanzania, to South Africa without going to Switzerland? Now that is where my talk about, or my idea about agribusiness comes in. Now that is one point. Another point is when we talk about agribusiness, we bring everybody into the stage of play. When you talk of agriculture, you are talking in silos. But when you talk of agribusiness, you are bringing all the ministries, all the departments, all the agencies together. Because you cannot talk of agribusiness without talking of finance. You cannot talk of agribusiness without talking of industry. You cannot talk of agribusiness without talking of trade, which we are talking about. But when you talk of agriculture, you tend to leave it to Ministry of Agriculture. And yet, Ministry of Agriculture is very important, but so is Ministry of Finance. And that brings me to the point about financing agribusiness. I love when we talk about agribusiness and funding or financing. In my own country, if you go to the commercial bank to take loan for agriculture, you will be lucky if you get the rate of 20%. With the rate of 20% for agri loan or agribusiness loan, you have to be producing cocaine to be able to make profit. Now that is the truth. You have to be producing cocaine to make profit. Now, it is ridiculous to extreme to say that you are promoting agriculture and you expect your farmers to go and get loan at the rate of anything more than single digit. They will not be able to make it. And that is the truth. Now, even when you go to our big African Development Bank, the time they take before I was trying to get loan from one of them.
Were you struggling?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. I was trying to get loan from one of them. It took me 6 years.
Wow.
Now,
wow.
I remember President Nana saying, I think here once, that look, he waited and he waited for too long to get loan from one of them. Now, if you have to wait for 6 years, what is the term of a president or a prime minister? 4 to 5 years. Now he has waited and his time has come and gone. He's still waiting. Now, what are we going to do about this? We have to do something about it. Yes. So what the infrastructure has been talked about. But I believe that there are a number of small areas where we can do a little compete better than we are doing. I believe that if we have thriving coastal shipping system, maybe from Cairo on the east to the Cape, on the west from Algiers through West Africa to the Cape, we will increase our intra-African trade by at least 10%. And we don't need much to be able to achieve that. On one occasion, I went to Angola, and I said, look, what can Nigeria trade with Angola on? And it's one little thing, which they call Indomie in Nigeria. This is a thing that is like spaghetti. And
It's noodles?
noodles,
Yes.
noodles. And children love it. Even some adults love it as well. and this is what Angola wants from Nigeria. But you cannot take that by air. And then I decided to look for, well, the coastal shipping. I couldn't get, I went to Calabar, and they said the ship that I can get are smuggling ships. Now, I would not want to use smuggling ship to try and do trading, but this is the sort of thing, and in the area of coastal shipping, we don't need much, and it can be done, and maybe it should be done. One last point that I want to make is the point about division of labor. Shouldn't we now be talking of regional division of labor? Here in West Africa, we produce cocoa. We can produce more rice. We can produce cassava. In East Africa, I was in Ethiopia. I went around with the Prime Minister. After Ukraine and COVID, Ethiopia has decided to be self-sufficient in wheat and to be a net exporter. And they will do it. And the Horn of Africa can produce wheat for the rest of us in Africa. Why don't we say, Horn of Africa, you do that. Pay attention to that. We in the lake region, we love dried tilapia. You produce fish for us and smoked, sun-dried, and that will be something, and we can trade in it in the rest of Africa. South Africa can produce beef and milk and wine, red and white. But what I'm saying is that isn't that a possibility and something that we can pay attention to? Regional division of labor in agribusiness, and to help us. Now, they won't say you won't do other things, but let us say in West Africa, 3 or 4 things: cocoa, maize, rice, and maybe cassava. Poultry will be our livestock, not too much of cattle. Let's leave cattle and milk, or beef and milk to Southern Africa and East Africa, that sort of thing. But I believe that where we are now is right, but it's not there. We are not there. And there's no earthly reason why we should be spending $40 billion a year on importation of food.
Absolutely.
It is not, it's unacceptable.
Thank you very much. In view of the comments from His Excellency Obasanjo, who it took 6 years to get a loan. I don't know what that means for the rest of us, let alone young people, etc. Can I ask the bankers in the room to put their hands up? Bankers, Abdul Majid, we know. Where are the rest? And asking, please, we need solutions to affordable access to finance. It's got to make sense. Your Excellency, I see you want to jump in. Please, let me ask you.
I wanted to do so because I think that President Obasanjo, as usual, has hit the nail on the head in identifying financing as a major roadblock, obstacle. It's been one of the biggest challenges of my government, how to be able to shift the flow of resources in the banking system from investing in paper, in industry, and supporting the agricultural sector or the agribusiness sector. And it has not been easy, and it continues to be difficult because obviously the risks attendant on financing agricultural activity, it has its own risk, and we have not devised sufficiently well the instruments in our country that would enable the banking system to be able to focus on that. But I think focusing on that is absolutely critical. I mean, here in Ghana, this is a country that has been built by farmers, specifically cocoa farmers. So we understand what the whole value chain of agriculture means. The whole of the last century, development of Ghana has been financed by the cocoa sector, essentially. Yes, the mining sector is also significant, but essentially it has been the cocoa sector that has brought us to where we are. So finding the solution and how we can generate the resources to support agribusiness in our country, I think is a major challenge confronting us. Since we've been in office, we have had to turn to a system of subsidies of our farmers, largely because of this gap of financing. The subsidies have to come from public resources, and that is this whole program we have called the Planting for Food and Jobs, where we have subsidized our smallholder farmers, because Ghanaian agriculture, like agriculture in many parts of the continent, is essentially smallholder farmers. We don't have huge plantations here, etc. Is to have financed, provided subsidies for the inputs, seedlings, fertilizer. That has been the pattern of our government. And it has yielded some positive results, no two ways about it. We have seen that even during this difficult time in the COVID thing, the supply of foodstuffs to the markets, the availability of foodstuffs in the Ghanaian market has not been an issue. It isn't as if in this period of difficulty, we have also witnessed shortages of foods, etc. On the contrary, access to foods has been one of the more robust responses that our economy has had. And it's largely because the system that we had to put in place has been relatively successful. But clearly, there is a limit to how far we can go down that road of public subsidy for agriculture. And we need to look very, very seriously at how we can develop another financial ecosystem that would enable resources to be channeled into the financing of agribusiness. And I think I would like very much to support the comments that President Obasanjo has made in this respect.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. When I come back to you, Wamkele, we'll go into this issue around access to finance and how to build financial ecosystems that make sense and can enable. Let me quickly come to you, Your Excellency Kikwete, and really looking at the opportunities and the challenges. And I met with some young people here in Ghana that we have trained and partnered with, and very interesting. All of them were in the ag sector. Some of them had stories of startup failure initially. One young man realized that his business in livestock wasn't working, but he realized what is needed here is feed for the livestock. And I can go into that business. And then he went in, and now he's doing that, and they're figuring it out. And being inclusive when it comes to young people, when it comes to smallholder farmers, when it comes to the most vulnerable, what must we do to make sure that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area works for them? Because we know, even with women, these tend to be the people on the ground who will be doing the work in the agricultural sector. Are we looking at that intentionally? And if so, what are we doing to enable them?
Well, first, Yeah, let me first comment on the issue of financing for the agricultural sector. I'm an agricultural economist. Then I have passion for agriculture. So when I became Minister of Finance, I went to a meeting of the annual meeting of the banking. At that time, we had only one bank, the National Bank of Commerce. And I was speaking to them at the annual meeting, and the managing director then, I think Kamuzora, I spoke about extending loan to the agricultural sector. They listened to me attentively. I thought they had heard me. But after my speech, when I was being escorted out by the managing director, he says, Minister, forget about giving loans to agriculture. The argument is, it is too risky. So, then when I became president, of course, before me, my predecessor, President Mkapa, created what President Nana is talking about, input subsidy to farmers. Because farmers need inputs. You cannot transform Africa's agriculture if we continue to use the hand hoe, if we continue to use traditional seeds, if we don't use fertilizers, if we don't irrigate, if we don't use herbicides and pesticides. So there was this crop subsidy. I trebled the amount of money for this program. But then what I saw was that the farmers are so many, and we cannot always raise enough money to give the farmers the subsidy in inputs to the size of the farms that they grow. Somebody has 10 acres. You cannot support all of them. If somebody has 50 acres, we would do 1 or 2 acres, and that was not enough to really take people out of poverty and ensure food security. So I came up with the idea of establishing the Agricultural Development Bank. I think the leadership is here with us. So that at some point we should transit from the concept of subsidies to get to a financial institution that is going to extend loan to farmers. Well, it takes time to build it. I'm not sure how far they are now. I'm out of office for the last 6, now it's close to 7 years. But this is one of the interventions. We created a system of savings and credit societies, SACCOs, to encourage farmers to come up with this coordinate. So that the other problem the farmers have is that of collateral. You go to a bank, get a loan, and say, fine, what is the collateral? If you don't pay, you guys, what are we going to sell? And the poor farmers with these mud huts, thatched roofs, the banks will not say, this cannot be used as a collateral. So we said, okay, fine, let's have the savings and credit societies in the rural areas, where it is this society that is going to borrow money from the bank, and they're the ones who are going to guarantee for on lend to farmers, and because they are their farmers, they are going to, of course, some of them, the repayment period has been, the repayment rate has been quite substantial. In fact, through their SACCOs, there is a lot of good payment of the loans, because it is them in the village, their own society. They know Kikwete has borrowed so much. They breathe on his neck to repay the loan. But we are not doing enough. So how to build, how to make the CRDB of Abdul Sekela, and there are the NBC guys there, the TADB, how to create a huge loan portfolio from the banks so that we can support the smallholder farmer has always been one of those challenges. Of course, there are a number of initiatives, but we have to continue to work on that. Well, what was your question?
My other question was inclusivity.
Inclusivity.
Yes.
Okay, inclusivity.
Especially young people, women,
Yeah.
smallholders.
Yeah, it's the same, because if you cannot have credit facilities, credit lines where young people, women can access loans, there is no way.
Yeah.
So the financial sector, a level of flexibility, I'm not sure if they would agree, but the level of flexibility, the conditionalities for loans, this is what the young people are saying. You're asking me for collateral. I've just finished university. What can I have as collateral to get a loan? But of course, to ask the bank also lend them without collateral, I think this is where we need to find, we have to be innovative so that these young people, you have an incubation, you incubate them, they come up with ideas. After they have finished those ideas, you need somebody to mentor them, but at the end of the day, they need money as venture capital that they're going to use so that they can translate their ideas into something tangible. This is where we have not yet been very successful, and if we can really unlock that one, we'll be able to do much better.
Thank you for that.
Madam,
and I think,
Madam, can I
please,
just,
Your Excellency, yes.
This is to take on the point that President Obasanjo said about cocoa. We are the second largest producers of cocoa in the world in Ghana, after our neighbor Cote d'Ivoire. And historically, the problem has been that the entire value chain of the cocoa output is developed outside our country. You talked about Switzerland and Germany, etc. There are encouraging signs in Ghana, because we are now seeing some young Ghanaian entrepreneurs who are going into the development of the cocoa industry. We have a company, for instance, called Niche here in Ghana, which has gone so far as to establish an American outlet whereby Ghanaian cocoa is now being used to produce chocolate in America by a Ghanaian company. Now, these are some of the developments that are taking place that we have to find a way of encouraging and making sure that they become not the exception, but the norm in the development of the cocoa industry. I mean, something like 40% of Ghanaian output is now processed locally. But the step from there to the higher levels in the value chain of the cocoa industry is still not there. But I'm encouraged by the fact that you have young entrepreneurs like the owners of the Niche who are now today prepared to take that step of producing chocolate here, they're doing so for the Ghanaian market, and are now have had the courage to say that they will establish facilities in the United States to produce cocoa over there. So some development and evolution is taking place, which is also quite positive, and we need to accentuate that and support that development.
Right, to support that, to grow that. It's such a sense of pride when we see our own Africans doing this on the continent. Incredible that they're doing it in the US as well, but we are a fast-growing population, and so we will consume this. We will consume this. Yes, Your Excellency, I see your hand, and then
thank you. I just want to underpin the point made by President Nana. The total cocoa industry in the world is about $132 billion. About $132 billion. The cocoa farmers, who are the key, what comes to them is less than, it's $9 billion. $9 billion go to cocoa farmers, those who toil night and day, and the rest, almost over $120 billion, goes to the processors, those who store cocoa, those who transport cocoa, those who carry cocoa on their ships. So it is delightful to hear that Ghana is processing up to 40%. When I was president, we had a cocoa summit. The price of cocoa is fixed in London. London doesn't produce a grain of cocoa. Now, and we found that we could, in West Africa, fix the price of cocoa if we can process and keep our cocoa for 1 year. Just be able to process and keep for 1 year.
Right.
We will be able to determine the price of cocoa in West Africa, but we have not been able to do that. Maybe when Ghana is processing 75% or 80%, and Cote d'Ivoire is doing the same, we will be able to determine the price of cocoa. I just want to say that.
Excellent. Wamkele, I had said to you, I'm going to come to you with the roadblocks. Clearly, we are hearing the roadblocks, we're seeing them. And how are you trying to tap into solutions for this? Access to finance, to ensuring that Africa is able to determine the pricing on some of its raw materials, to enable the manufacturing. Walk us through these. And I know you do have, you've developed a youth protocol, a women protocol, so the issue of inclusivity as well. Take us through some of these things, please.
Well, thank you very much. I think what's clear is that the easiest part is negotiating the rules that will enable the trade to happen. What's more difficult is trade finance and establishing the supply chain networks that will enable the goods to move across borders. If I may start with, the presidents have spoken about the cost of trade finance. So if we succeed, which I do believe we will, to reduce and eliminate the legal barriers to trade, how do we make sure that the smallholder farmers benefit from a larger market? We are negotiating a protocol on women and youth in trade. Mama President Samia Suluhu Hassan hosted us last year in Dar es Salaam to discuss exactly how we can eliminate these barriers. Our banks, our development finance institutions, African Development Bank, Africa Finance Corporation, Trade and Development Bank of Africa, and African Bank, the big question we should be putting to them, which we are, is how do you avail your balance sheet to make sure that the de-risking happens for the smallholder farmers that the presidents spoke about? How can they bring their capital to support local banks, to reduce the cost of money, to support commercial banks locally in every country or district, so that the local banks or cooperative banks can make trade finance affordable for cross-border trade? Because until we address this question of access to finance, we will succeed in reducing and eliminating the legal barriers. The market will be open, but the goods will not flow because the access is not there to finance. The second challenge, which again we're addressing, is how do we establish these supply chain networks to enable the beef to move from Botswana to West Africa, Ugandan milk to move from Uganda to North Africa, the chocolate to move from West Africa to Southern Africa. So the supply chain networks that have to be established to enable that trade to happen are critical. Many countries in West Africa import because of global trade rules. It's cheaper to import beef from another part of the world than, let's say, from Botswana because of subsidies that distort global markets, particularly in cotton and so on. But even if we were to address that question, we would still need to make sure that the supply chain networks enable Ugandan milk, 200 billion liters of excess milk to move from Uganda to Nigeria. We'd still be able to make sure that the wheat moves from Ethiopia to Egypt and so on. So we have to take additional steps to make sure that this trade becomes a reality. And that's where our development finance institutions come in. That's where we have to work with our airline industry to make sure that we have these supply chain networks. Otherwise, we will forever be importing from other parts of the world because it's easier to do so because those products are subsidized.
Right, right. Thank you for that. Your Excellencies, I'm going to come in almost a quick fire round to each of you on my next question. Starting with you, Your Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn. The reality of the world today is that we are in an incredibly dynamic time. And there are a lot of pressures, global pressures in many different ways. And Africa is well positioned. And we have a lot of people coming because of the dynamics, pulling us in one direction or another and pulling us away from our dream of this united, open continent. How do we navigate through this current season we are in to ensure that we're not going into an economic scramble for Africa, where we get dazzled by things being offered here or there and do not pay attention to our Africa continental free trade areas and our opportunities to build up ourselves together. Desalegn, please, would you start us off?
I think there is a need for political leadership and political will. I think that's a key. We can't bypass that. So our leaders has to come up that united, we are strong. And so I think this is the basis. Beyond that, there are practical measures we have to take. Now we have to make Africa integrated in terms of infrastructure. Infrastructure is very essential, and we have to come together. We have programs like Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa. We call it PIDA, which is an African Union program. We have to expedite the implementation of that. I think we can do that with multilateral financial institutions involved within it. As the Secretary General was mentioning, we need to have ability to move commodities from one part of Africa to the other. There is, good sign. ECOWAS, ECA, the East African Community, EAC, they are doing very good job. I think that regional integration can help us to connect together all those dots which are not connected. Okay. I think this is important. But let me say something about the Tanzanian program on inclusion. President Samia has introduced a youth agricultural engagement program. They call it Building a Better Future, the BBI. So I think that program is designed intentionally to bring the youth into agriculture, making agriculture attractive to the young people. Digitally driven, land allocated, financial inclusion is there, technological support is provided. So these kind of intentional programs are important. They wanted every institutions, be it bilateral or multilateral institutions, supporting Tanzanian programs to gear towards the inclusion program. I think that kind of program is exemplary. It has to be, expanded in our continent. So that brings the extent of young private sector engagement. I think in our continent, private sector dynamism is essential. We have to do that as much as possible. Even in infrastructure development, there are a number of African private sector that come together along with other global infrastructure developers in a private sector. If we make the business working environment conducive for this kind of private dynamism, to happen in our continent. So there are a number of solutions that are already existing, but what needs is political will and political leadership to achieve this situation, because there is a clarion call now. Because of the global dynamism, Africa is at the receiving end, and we need to do that as quickly as possible. There is a sense of urgency at this level.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Your Excellency, President Obasanjo, the same question to you, please.
Thank you very much. I will go to what the two speakers before me on this have, what the point they have made. The Executive Secretary of the African Free Trade Agreement talked about the banks. I believe you need to get those three continental development banks, the Africa Development Bank, Afrexim, and AFC, together with the governors of our central banks to talk about this. They can find solution.
Right.
I have no doubt about that. We tried something before in Nigeria. We did not continue it. We call it a Greek guarantee scheme. The central bank guarantees a loan up to 75% given for agriculture. And if that loan goes bad, central bank will pay you 75% of the loan. And it worked. It has not been continued. I don't know what happened to it when I left government. But that's one thing. I want to come to what Prime Minister El-Mariam said about political will. I like political will, but I like political will with political action. There may be political will without political action.
Can we give that a round of applause?
There may be political will without political action, which will amount to abortion. And we don't want abortion. We want a child to be developed in the womb, and to be born and to grow up. That's what political will and political action is all about. I believe that our leaders, and we can see the example in the African Free Trade, Continental Free Trade Agreement itself. Now, in a space of 3 years, we have got how many people? How many countries have now? 47 out of 54.
Wow.
I believe it's unprecedented in the annals of African political action. So it can be done, and just to get up, maybe at the continental level, and then take it down to regional economic unit level. And I believe that is what we have to do. But we have no choice. Yeah. Now, this point you are making is that, look, how do we make sure that we are not divided between this and that? It's their own interest to divide us. And we shouldn't deny, we shouldn't just bury our head in the sand. It's their interest to divide us. Now we need what they want. And if we don't guard what we have, they want it. And if they can get it free, they will get it free. If they can get it by dividing us, they will divide us and get it. If they can get it even by eliminating us, they will eliminate us and get it. Now, if we understand that, it is now up to us to guard what we have. Now, we have 70% of the cobalt in the world in 2 countries in Africa. And the world when you talk of battery and for whatever we are talking for cars and all that, this is an essential. Now, why should they fold their arms and leave it to us if they need it, and they need it? So what are we doing about it to preserve that collectively in Africa? What are our development banks doing about it to make sure that this, which is a material that the world needs, particularly the developed world, and that we take it as something that we can guard and make available to the world in our own terms, on our own terms, rather than let them take it from us. The Chinese have, they have their military interested in this, and the West have their industries interested in this. We should know that, and we should make sure that we do something about it, not that they force it on us. I went to Turkey once, and being a poultry farmer, I was in Accra, and I said, look, if there are any poultry farm around, they say there's one about 1 hour, 15 minutes from Accra. And I went there. This is a poultry farm. It produces 1 million eggs a day. 1 million eggs a day. And only 15 people are working there. It's almost completely, totally automated. And I asked the owner, I said, how much did this cost you? He said a little bit over $40 million. And 50% of it was grant. 50% of it, according to him, was grant. And what does he want? He wants to start exporting eggs to Nigeria. I said, not on your life.
Sorry, where was this? Where was this
in
from?
Turkey.
In Turkey?
Yeah,
in Turkey.
In Turkey.
Okay.
Near is about 1 hour, 15 minutes to Accra.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I went there. I just wanted to. I say, not on your life.
Not
now, but
on
the
your
point
life.
is this.
Yes.
There is no Nigerian poultry farmer producing eggs that will be able to compete with him.
Yes.
Because we don't get any grant. He got 50% grant to start and to produce. So that is the sort of thing that we should understand, and that our own leaders should understand.
Yes.
And be able to say, look, if this is the problem, how do we confront it?
Right, and bringing together, for instance, the development banks into a strategic, intentional conversation to solve that. We don't have much time. President Kikwete and then President Nana Akufo-Addo, I want to come to both of you with that question around how does Africa remain focused on Africa's agenda and not dazzled by, please, thank you, sir. Yes.
Let me start. Let me start, and the president has the final word.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I think it's a question of decision on the part of the leaders. They will always try to drag you. There was a time somebody was asking me, is Africa supporting Ukraine? I said, I'm not president. but the point I'm saying is, somebody else at one point was asking me a question. You know, I'm on a program at Harvard University, Harvard Leadership Ministerial Program, and that time the issue had just started in Ukraine, and somebody was asking me, but is Africa supporting Ukraine? I said, well, I don't know, I'm not a leader, but what I've seen is that when the crisis started, when people were being evacuated, boarding onto trains, they were throwing away Africans who are in Ukraine. So do you expect under those circumstances really Africa would be amused? And they said, but hasn't the president apologized for this? I said, I don't know. I'm not in government. So there are times when it is their issues, they want us to support them. But when it is our issues, they don't care about it. So this is precisely the point where we have to know what are issues of our interest to us, and if these interests coincide with their interests, then that's fine. But if they don't, we should not be forced to abandon our interest in favor of their interests. I think that is suicidal, and that will not take us anywhere. And for this thing is one thing that I always compliment President Nana here for being quite strong, for telling it as it is. Yes, and you know, when you stand with Macron and tell him what you told him, I honestly admire you. Please.
When you finish, I just want to say something about that.
Yes.
You see, the world out there will respect us when we stand firm, we stand together, and we stand strong. And that is what President Nana had done, to say, look, this is our interest. And they will also respect us when we respect ourselves. Part of the problem, too, is that at times we don't respect ourselves. We must learn to respect ourselves.
He has said it all.
Thank you. President Akufo-Addo, please.
Thank you very much. I think there's a British statesman some time ago in the 19th century who made the statement that his country doesn't have permanent friends. It only has permanent interests. And I think that is the philosophy that should guide us. That we don't have permanent friends. We have permanent interests, which is about what we want in the world. And that our response to everybody is guided by what we want in the world, how we see our own development, how we can assert more control over our own resources, how we can develop the societies that we want. And if our mindset is there, that what matters for us are our interests, the rest finds its way of fitting in. And I've always been guided by that statement. We don't have permanent friends. We have permanent interests.
Right.
And it is those permanent interests that we should be pushing and advocating, advancing all the time.
Thank you all. As we close, just very, very quickly, I want us to make a commitment, each of us. How are we going to advance the agenda? We probably are already deep in the space, but what commitment can we make to the continent moving forward? I will start as an African, and as part of the MasterCard Foundation, our mission is to see 30 million young Africans in dignified work by 2030. We are working with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area on various different fronts. We're working with organizations like Accra at the Pan-African level, various different things happening. At country level, we are training young people. We are looking at access to finance. We will continue in that space to do those things, and we will give voice to those who are voiceless, the young people, the women, young women, and the smallholder farmers. Wamkele, what are you committing to? You are marshaling the troops, you are leading this journey. What commitment do you make to Africa?
Well, we continue, and I personally continue to be committed to commercially meaningful integration. Political integration, I believe, is there, but commercially meaningful integration is a commitment that has to drive the implementation of the AFCFTA. if you consider the fact that 72 years ago, the European Union started with 5 countries, 5 or 6 countries, under the then European Coal and Steel Pact. And today it is singularly the most competitive economic integration model in the world, with a single monetary union. This is something that our forebears, as His Excellency President Akufo-Addo said, envisaged 7 decades ago. So we have to remain on this path of integration. It is going to be difficult. It is going to be daunting. There may at times be temptations to withdraw and look inward at national interests, but we have to remain on the path, and I think the presidents have said it all, that we are not yet there, but we are on the path. We've started the journey, and I am very privileged to be part of that journey and to stand on their shoulders, to continue the journey.
Right, excellent. Your Excellency, thank you. Haile Mariam Desalegn, your commitment to Africa, you also are in this space. What's your commitment as you move forward?
Yeah, I think if we have to learn from history, then I think the more balkanized we are, we cannot succeed in the global competition. So Africa has to come together, and I think this is a big opportunity for us in the African Continental Free Trade Area to be implemented with its letter and spirit. But we need to have something to be tradable. Otherwise, we cannot achieve that. So we need to build our productive capacity. Right. I want to focus time and again, without that productive capacity in our continent, it becomes a wishful thinking. So we need to have that, and we have to gear all our policies, programs, and the Baba said political action. I also said political leadership, Baba. But in any case, I think that's very essential, and we hope we can achieve that, and we need that commitment.
Thank you so much. Your Excellency, Baba, what do you say? What is your commitment moving forward?
I believe that leadership is essential. I believe in what President Nana said, what is our interest? And if we know our interest, how can we protect and guard our interest? That is very, very important. And not just individually, but collectively as a continent. The good old saying is that if you want to walk fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. I believe we have to go fast and go together.
We have to go fast and we have to go far. So the challenge is real.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have to go far and we have to go fast.
Exactly.
Because we cannot afford to be left behind. I am a very great believer in our youth.
Yes, thank you.
And the future and the present. I always say to youth, don't listen to anybody who says the future belongs to you. If you don't take care of the present, you won't have the future which they say belongs to you, because they will have ruined it. They will have ruined it for you, and you won't have the future. And we are a continent of youth.
Yes. Yes.
And if we are a continent of youth, we must really treat our youth. Take my own country. 20 million children that should be in school are not in school. Out of 240 or so in the world. So we have 10% of children that should be in school that are not in school in the world. Now, what future do we have for those children? And if you are worried about Boko Haram today, now those are Boko Haram of tomorrow. You don't need for anybody to tell you that, well, those will be liability tomorrow. So we must really take care of today so that tomorrow can take care of itself.
Powerful, powerful. Thank you so much. Your Excellency Kikwete, your commitments moving forward.
My commitment is working. Yeah. I'm a believer in integration. I've worked for the East African Community Integration, Southern Africa. I was part of the working on the Constitutive Act of the African Union. I hope, President, you were a foreign minister at that time? Yes. We labored so much in Sirte. We resisted a lot of pressure.
So we blame you, foreign minister, for all the things that you did not do.
But, you know, we had a tough time because at the beginning, the Libyan delegation came up with the Libyan constitution as take it as the new constitutive act. We said no. We had a huge problem. We had a big fight until we came to that. But the point I'm saying is that I believe if we can drive the African integration agenda successfully, everything else would be easy on the African continent. Of course, there is much more that needs to be done, but if we can forge unity. I have that commitment. I'll continue along that path. Whatever I can do to advance the African integration agenda, I will definitely do.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. Mr. President, your commitment, and you have the final word.
My commitment, I'm heading it, so I can't be a personal commitment. There's an expression, a mantra we are using here in Ghana to define our future, that is to create a Ghana beyond aid. That continues to be the focus of all that we're trying to do here, to build a country which is resilient, which is self-reliant, and therefore is dependent on itself in terms of its development of human capital, the way in which it exploits its wealth, the way in which it builds on its population. All of these are being done within the context of a country that has a vision for its own development. And that vision feeds into the larger African vision of a united continent. We have a lot to do with the whole Pan-African idea. Our first leader was one of the most articulate promoters of the idea, and it is something that is now part and parcel of the Ghanaian political fabric. So moving on that and making sure that indeed we can arrive at that goal, that's a major commitment.
Thank you for that. And ladies and gentlemen, in the land of Kwame Nkrumah, I feel optimistic. Thank you. I feel we can do this. I feel that our youth, our continent, our people have the energy, and we can transform and bring to life this integrated agenda. And with agriculture, it means a transformation of our countries and our continent in a powerful way. A big thank you to this panel. Please, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Tulu Gichuru and their excellencies. Respectfully, I shall indulge you for quick photo opportunities. We shall have two of them. First, with all the members of the panel. Doc, let's have you in the middle together with your excellencies. Please be seated. Your Excellencies, we shall have 3 short photograph sessions. Yes. I shall humbly now invite you to the base of the stairs, where I shall invite to join you Excellencies, former heads of state, the former President of the Republic of Tunisia, His Excellency Mazuki, His Excellency Goodluck Jonathan, and His Excellency Thomas Boni Yayi. Quickly, I shall invite to join upstage all members of the diplomatic corps, all heads of mission. Please take your place upstage, right behind their excellencies. Right behind their excellencies, all members of the diplomatic corps. The last photograph will be with ministers of state from various African countries. Respectfully, I invite you. Please join the excellencies at the base of the stairs, ministers of state. I'm told Excellency smile. Lovely. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Ladies and gentlemen, a resounding round of applause. Shortly, we shall bring this opening ceremony to a close. A few announcements, and then we shall be out of here. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated briefly. Please be seated briefly. We will be out of here in no time. Can I have your attention for the following announcements, please? Lunch will be served in these designated areas for all our VIPs, heads of state, former and current. We invite you to the Stafford, that's the VIP lunch. All business leaders who have been invited, please take note of that. All business leaders who have been invited, yours is the second floor, you'll be ushered there. And all others, ours is the Chef George, just up the flight of stairs. Let's please take note again. The VIPs will be ushered to the Stafford area. The second floor is for business leaders who have been invited. And the third would be the Chef George for all others. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the first part, the opening ceremony. We shall reconvene here in exactly 1 hour. Bon appetit, and I'll see you soon.